book review on video again. This time I'm going to talk about this book, The Elephant Keeper by Christopher Nicholson, which I think is possibly his debut novel. It's been nominated for, I think, several awards. One of them is the Costa Novel Award, 2009. I read it, or decided to read it, because I love elephants and I'm interested in anything to do with elephants, and I would recommend this to everyone who agrees with me, that elephants are wonderful animals and fantastically interesting. But also I would recommend it to people who like a well-written historical novel, because this is very well written and believable. I don't know enough about the period to say that it really is a faithful retelling, but it sounds very believable to me. It seems very plausible. It is, I hesitate to say based on a true story, but it is definitely based on true facts that the author has found in his research into the first elephants in English history. Because of course it's only in modern times, the Victorian period and onwards, that elephants have come to be cared for in England in any numbers, but they came to England long before that, centuries before that, and were cared for, but probably didn't live very happy lives, because that wasn't only a problem in England, it was a problem everywhere, that their habits were very poorly understood, so it was very difficult to know, except in those few countries where it was a part of the culture. Thailand and India, a few places like that. Anywhere else, it was almost impossible to know how to care for one. This is the story of two elephants who come to England in the 18th century as basically fancies for rich people. Impressive items of property you can show off. And it's a story, first and foremost, of our narrator, the young man Tom, who is a stable boy, the son of a man who cares for a rich man's stable. He is shanghaied, more or less, into becoming an elephant keeper. He is the elephant keeper. He, of course, knows nothing about elephants. But at that time, in that place, nobody knows anything about elephants. So that's not a problem in and of itself. But Tom, he has empathy, is what he has, with living creatures, but first and foremost, the creatures in his charge, the horses. And he extends that to these two elephants that are put into his keeping. And, of course, they're very expensive to keep, and at the same time basically useless in that setting. So that while their original establishment seems to be safe and secure and whatnot, it isn't really. And the elephants have to move on, find another place. Or rather, humans have to find it for them. And Tom maybe should abandon them to their fate, but can't bear to. He's a very faithful friend to his charges. And basically this is the story of Tom's life, with first two, then one elephant. And it says here, the extraordinary friendship and understanding between a young man and a beautiful, intelligent beast. But Tom himself is also very intelligent and also very, I want to say in touch with his emotions, which sounds kind of cliched, but he has empathy. Basically, he feels for Jenny, as he begins to call his elephant. And he has a rapport with her. That a lot of people who keep elephants end up feeling for them, because they are very special animals. They are something unique in the animal kingdom, except perhaps for us. And at this time, of course, there was no one who knew that about elephants. And Tom doesn't know it either, but he feels it. instinctively. The story is partly funny, partly extremely sad and tragic, but always very moving. If you are someone like myself who empathizes very much with animals, even fictional ones, then I have to warn you that there are things in this book that are going to just about break your heart. There is one scene especially, which it's now been many months since I read the book, and that image still comes into my mind now and then, and I just have to force it out because it's enough to make me almost cry just thinking about it. So this isn't a cozy, feel-good sort of book. Be warned. It has those elements where you really are so moved by the relationship as described between a human being and an animal. And like I said, it has some very funny moments, and it has so many moving moments, but there are also some pretty gruesome stuff in here that as an elephant lover you should prepare yourself for. If you like historical novels, this is a wonderful one. This gives also... Tom, of course, he's of the lower classes. He's a servant. So he lives his life, goes about his business, does his duties. But it does also, through Tom and his experiences, it gives an insight into the lives of the other half, if I can go so far as to call him a half. He gets quite a lot of insight into, rich people. And how in some ways they're very different from him. Like I said, he has empathy. And that's something that you can become insulated from if you have enough money. More or less. And Tom definitely experiences that. But there are very few people in this book who are what I mentioned, all just creepy rich guy or mean rich guy. The characters here are fantastic. Mr. Nicholson is an absolutely amazing storyteller and an amazing character builder. There's a wonderful cast of characters here, and they're all so believable. And like I said before, I don't know that much about the 18th century, late 18th century, this is the second half. I don't know enough to say that I'm right in thinking this is very believable and plausible, but it certainly reads that way. There are lots and lots of little details, fascinating details, and also in the way that he's written it, because it's written, Tom is our narrator, and it's written in the first person, and basically as Tom's narrative, he's been asked to write down the history of the elephant, and so he's supposed to be writing this in, 1773, I think? And as a literary conceit, that actually works here. It is quite convincing. There's a little bit too much direct dialogue, direct conversation, to make it entirely credible. But overall, in terms of word choice, grammar, it is quite credible as something that might have been written at that time, as far as I know. It's beautifully written, and as the Daily Mail wrote that it's captivatingly original, and I totally agree. I haven't read anything like this book, and I read a lot. I would just recommend it to almost anyone, certainly anyone who loves elephants. It does also give insight into the history of elephants in the United Kingdom. There is a very interesting appendix here, illustrated, which, I have to say, is in the author's note, where he writes about elephants' history in Britain, and it's really fascinating. Beautifully written, a fantastic story, and so moving. Beautiful language, very convincing. Wonderful cast of characters. If you don't like stories where animals are, well, not anthropomorphized, but given equal emotional depth with humans, then this may not be a book for you. But if you love elephants, I don't think you're going to mind a story like that. It's tragic and very sad, almost heartbreaking at times, but it's also beautiful. Beautifully written, beautiful cast of characters, a fantastic story, just fascinating, and one of the most moving books I've read in a long time. So, check this out. Some of you may be sorry, but most of you, if you take my warnings to mind, will not be. It's a wonderful read. The Elephant Keeper by Christopher Nicholson.